Welcome to Barnyard Language, honest talk about running farms and raising families. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer, with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us.
While this is a podcast for farm families, sometimes our content isn't for the whole family. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language. This is the second part of an episode that we aired last week. If you haven't already listened to part 1, go back now. If you want early access to full episodes, become a patron at patreon.com/Barnyard Language today. Your support for the show makes it possible to continue creating the podcast. So, Erin, I'd like to back up quite a ways, actually. As someone who dealt with a lot of fertility issues and lives in a community where people do start, having babies at 18, and then a lot of people seem to just pop them out at a very regular interval. And interacting with a few people who had unexpected pregnancies, some of them more unexpected than others, shall we say, with, to be perfectly honest, if someone who's not on birth control and knows that they're fertile says, I have no idea how I got pregnant, I'm pretty sure you do know exactly how this happened. Okay. But, with an IUD, it's real unexpected. And I had honestly never considered that it's an unexpected, unwanted medical diagnosis at that point, just like being diagnosed with anything else that you would not expect or want. And how much it's obvious that even in my own brain, some part of me still equates not wanting a pregnancy with not wanting a baby. And I think there is this stigma that if you didn't want to be pregnant, it means that you don't want the baby and that you don't love the baby. Which is a bullshit, and obviously with things like adoption, also bullshit, because being pregnant does not make you a parent. Being a parent makes you a parent. And I wanted to thank you for realigning my thinking on this, because I've carried a lot of anger for a long time towards some of these women who were like, I just don't know how this keeps happening, when I'm like throwing money at people to try to make this happen intentionally and it's not working. And to hear people be like, I didn't want to get pregnant. I'm like, yeah, okay. But I mean, if you do everything to prevent a medical situation and you plan your whole life to not include this medical situation, and then you end up with this medical situation, with basically any other medical situation, we would understand that there might be some feelings that might not be real positive.
It's a really complicated thing, I think. And when you deal with infertility issues, it's a really tough pill to swallow to hear somebody say, but I didn't want this. And that's something that has always been on my mind. And I think that's where a lot of my self-hatred came from in my own pregnancy, because the clinic that I worked in then, our office manager was such a beautiful, lovely person. And she had been trying for so long to have a baby, and it just wasn't happening. And the last thing that I wanted to do was to make her feel like I had something that she didn't get to have, but it was really, really hard for me to hide the way that I was feeling and how physically sick I was too. But, as I got a little bit older and, certainly the practice that I joined here in Connecticut, I was a few years older than most of the other women in the practice. So where I was married and had a child, a lot of these women were just getting married and trying to figure out if and when to have a baby. And the thing that I always used to say to them was, there is a difference between having a baby and wanting to parent. Parenting is a lifelong job, and having a baby a lot of times feels like something that people do on social media, right? Like the getting the pregnancy and then the 47 events that we have to have the photographer for during the pregnancy, and then the birth, and then the birth story, and then the breastfeeding journey. And then like all of these things are like, it's a huge fanfare on social media, and you just have to figure out like, do you want to have the baby or do you want to be a parent? And if you want to be a parent, there's 1,000 ways you can do that. You don't have to have the baby. If that's what you want, you should get that. You know, you should do whatever you can to get that, but you don't necessarily have to do that.
I think, though, too, there is this, the expression of, well, if you can't have kids, then like just skip the fertility treatment altogether and just adopt. And like that's both easy, and we know that it's not, and affordable, and that you would get approved, and that you're, that is even available to you, because depending, it took you 2 years, right? You said in the state that you're in to even get approved to foster. That process does not happen easily for everyone, and all of the the financial and emotional steps along the way. So if someone is thinking about fostering, what would you tell them from the perspective that you have now?
Um, if you are considering it, or if it's crossed your mind, I would say to just please give it a real chance as a viable option. Private adoption is so incredibly expensive, and it's so problematic, and there's so many weird things attached to private adoption. Um, Fostering to adoption is such a beautiful way for people that don't have the money for private adoption to do the same thing. And we've had so many people during this whole process say the stupidest shit about things that they heard about fostering children that were just pure ignorance. And it was always like, oh, good for you guys, but I could never. I could never do it because, I heard this horror story. And it's like, well, where'd you hear that story? You heard it from Kenny down the road, whose cousins fostered children in 1980, So before you write this option off, find foster parents near you that are current, not people that fostered 5 years ago or 10 years ago, currently, because these systems change all the time, and speak to them before you write this off. I mean, it is a real option, and there's so many weird misconceptions about it. I mean, I've had people say to us like, well, foster parents just get the check from the government and they just live off of that. Or, well, the other total extreme, right? Like you have to be rich to foster children. Neither. Okay. You do get government subsidies. They're not that great. You cannot live off of them, but they do help tremendously with the cost of raising a kid. Like, for example, in this state, if you foster children, the state will pay for daycare. That's a huge financial burden lifted off of your family that keeps you working too. And like, you might not realize that. You might have a totally different picture in your head until you speak to somebody in your own community in your current year that has that fostering experience. And the other thing I think I hear all the time is like, so great that you guys want to do it, but we could never do it because, those kids are just, they turn out to be real bad apples and we just don't have it in us. And that's valid. Like, you can definitely look at some of these challenges and be like, this isn't for me. It's not what I want as a parent to deal with this. That's fine. But these are children that we're talking about. And just like a child in your life that you know and love and you have future hopes for, that child still deserves whatever support and resources and love that you have for children, period. You know, just because they're not your children doesn't mean they don't deserve the stability and the meals and the bedroom that you can give them. I would argue more so they need more of that to be able to go on and live a successful life. And I'm not trying to say like this is the best way to be a parent or you should do this. I'm just trying to say just give it its due diligence as a consideration in your head. And if you have questions about what it actually looks like, there's a lot of ways to figure out the answers to that. Um, but it's not for everybody, and that's totally okay. Like, pregnancy was never for me, and I will never be pregnant again. Um, and I just think, like, back to that night that they took 20 plus kids out of that situation that they were in, where did those other children go? Because I do know that night how many other parents were available, and it wasn't that many. So, where do those other children go? Where are they now? And how did that change their life trajectory? And it's really easy to think about a situation like that and be like, that doesn't go around in my town. Or like, I live in too nice of an area. We don't have homeless kids here, like, blah, blah, blah. No, I promise you that there are children in your town that need to be removed from their home and have nowhere to go. Um, so you can't exempt yourself from thinking there's not a need in your area.
So, Erin, it's a little bit ironic that my husband and I had started classes to foster to adopt, because we were at the end of our what we thought was the end of our fertility journey and couldn't afford IVF, couldn't afford private adoption because it is really damn expensive. Um, Started classes for foster to adopt, and then found out I was pregnant, which when I called to cancel the classes, I was told was really common. um, but the reasons that we had for wanting to do it have not gone away with having biological children. I mean, we wanted kids. That, like, baseline part of the goal has been met. We have kids. I would like to have more children, and not in like a, I need 25 kids to work my sheep kind of way, but just in a, we have more to offer and we have a lot more resources that could be being used, um, for these children who don't in any way, shape, or form deserve the resources that they are not getting. Um, Wait, let me rephrase that. These children do not have not done anything to deserve to not have what other kids have. That's yes. Okay, that's better because I'm pretty sure the first time I said they didn't deserve it. Um they don't deserve what they've got. They do deserve what all children deserve, which is a happy, loving, stable, resourced people. Um but how do we pull the trigger on starting this process now that, I mean, we're not ready now. We have a 7-year old and an 8-year old and a farm and jobs. And, like, even in the best possible situation, even thinking about just adding a class, let alone a whole ass human, is too much chaos. But how do you know that you're ready to do this?
I mean, I'm an analytical person, so for me, it's logistics, finances, time. Um, Logistically, is the bedroom open for a child? You want to be able to guarantee a child, at least in the beginning, their own bedroom, because you don't know what situation they're coming for and how traumatizing it might be for them to share a bedroom. So, is there an open bedroom? Financially, have you recovered enough from children to be able to take on more children? And, like, I hate to put it like that, but those little shitheads are expensive. Um, and then hours in the day, do you have the hours or not? And with the financial piece of it, I feel like the caseworkers are really helpful with that during class because they can tell you exactly what will be subsidized and what you can expect. But for hours in the day and bedroom space, I mean, you have to, I guess, move through life imagining, if we had another child, what would we be doing right now? And how would that look? Like, my husband and I were just reminiscing a couple nights ago about how we had like 3 years to get ready for this, and we kind of assumed that we would be taking more than one child. So we had multiple spaces prepared. We had a whole range of clothing. We had all the different cribs and bassinets and passies and bottles, and we had so many things ready. Like at any given moment, we were just ready, right? And then we got the two kids placed with us, and the next day I was like, fuck, we need 6 car seats. 6. We need 6 of them because we have 2 compact vehicles, and the car seat that we have for my son is too wide to put 2 other car seats in the back seat and fit that one. So we have to replace his one with the narrow one, which means we need 6 car seats. What the fuck?
Just to leave the house.
Just to, yeah, like we got to take these sick things to the doctor. And like, I don't even know how we're going to do that. We got to go in shifts. We got a caravan. Like, these are, you have to like really imagine, what does this look like? And what does this step look like? And what does this step look like?
So what did the steps look like, beyond those first few months of newborn, um, building trust and the reality of siblings in your house? If you can kind of like push us ahead, 6 months, like a year, like where did your family go in that journey?
So pushing ahead like 6 months a year, the next challenge was getting each child settled into daycare at a time that was going to be appropriate and in the best way, because um, Jackson needed to start basically as soon as possible because he was so under socialized and not, socially developed, that the state wanted him in that sort of oversight with a lot of other children his age right away. Right away, though, when it's so hard to find daycare.
Right. And one that would take him with the needs that he had.
Right. Means several months. And then it's like, we've never seen a doctor before, so we have to get vaccinated. Right. It's like that was a whole aspect of it. So a lot of what I did like 6 months later was like, I would call it drills, right? So it was stuff like, today we are going to practice what it looks like to get the baby dressed, get Jackson dressed, get everybody fed, load up in the car, and drive to daycare. We're not starting daycare yet, but he needs to, I need to be able to figure out where we're at in the timeline of him eating a meal and how long that takes and how challenging that's going to be. Along with, the baby was on like every 2 hour medications for different things. And so we need to be able to get that down and then load up in the car. He needs to learn to let me buckle his seatbelt, and that doesn't mean that I'm about to violate him. We need to learn that just because we stopped at a red light doesn't mean that I'm going to get out of the car and leave the car parked here for several hours and never come back. It was like drilling. Everything was a drill for me, right? So then it was like, what does it look like to go to the park? What are going to be the obstacles there? If we go to the park and he runs away from me, am I going to be able to chase him down with the baby in the baby carrier? And are the police going to arrest me for what I have to do to get him to come back to me? You know what I mean? So getting him into daycare was a big hurdle. And then the issue after that was just Maddie. She was so sick and she had so many problems. And we were just, all 5 of us in the family, battling this multi-drug resistant scabies and what that meant for our home. And so getting past the hurdle of treating the house, the kids having to see specialists, us having to see specialists, her being just so compromised, and having to get her into a spot medically where daycare was even comfortable taking her. That's what we were tied up in for months, between that like 6 to 12 month post placement area. And that was also the period of time where I was like, I've run out of the savings that I had for maternity leave. I need to figure out how to work. So also enter in job interviews, networking, like me doing everything I could to try to earn a dollar. It's hard. I think that was probably the hardest part of all of it. I mean, that like 0 to 6 months post placement was just so beautiful. there's nothing like maternity leave with a new baby. It's so precious. And even with like Jackson and all those complications, I would wake up every day knowing it would be a hard day with him and the baby, but that this was the best place for him to be. And I got to be that place for him. But I would say 6 to 12 months is when like reality set in and it was harsh. So, and it was just a never ending cycle of like paperwork for this agency, paperwork for that agency, court hearings, job interviews. Like,
So, part of why we started the podcast is that farm parents already deal with so many different things than a lot of parents do. How do you get emotional support for this level of, I mean, there's some, support for foster parents, I think, but I mean, having a newborn and a toddler is such a logistical shit show on the best of days with kids who aren't eating because they're toddlers and not because they don't know how. How do you find your community in, you know, I mean, thank God there aren't more people out there in this situation, but also like where do you even begin to get support for this?
I mean, I don't know that I have a great answer. No one quite, I think, understands what that all feels like, other than someone who's been in that situation before. And like I said, we were already pretty socially isolated in this area. And then the only context in which people in the community knew me was as the vet, and that they knew that the vet left and it was like dubious, weird circumstances. And no one really felt comfortable chatting with me if I ran into them in public, suddenly with two brand new children. Um, and it was incredibly isolating. And a couple of things, a couple of people definitely are what filled that void for me. So at that time, there was a program within the Department of Children and Families where they would assign you a mentor. So you would basically have like a mandated friend that has taken in a case that's similar to you. And they even try to bring it down to demographics. So they found me somebody that was the same age as me, who had a bio son the same age as me, who had taken in a kid the same age as me just 2 years prior. And she had to call me for an hour twice a week. And that was great. I have no idea what that was like for her, but I needed that. Um, the other thing was I had a client from the practice who was a foster parent. And, I knew that obviously because I'd been out to his farm and I'd seen all the children, and the children don't look like him. So, um, and at that point I was also under like a little bit of like a gag clause too, where I really was not allowed to approach clients. But I really stuck my neck out there and I messaged him one day and I was like, I would so love to have a single other adult to speak to that knows what this is like. um and like, thank God for Eric, because even just like the couple of like very simple things he was able to say or commiserate with me on, like it just gave me so much value. um and then I had one coworker who, she had been my technician when I was at that practice and then had left actually right before I did. And we always like had issues getting along, we always clashed at work. But she reached out to me and she was like, hey, I just want to let you know I'm here for you. She's like, I heard, that you weren't at the practice anymore, but that you finally got the kids. And she's like, I'm so happy for you. Whatever shit we had, it's water under the bridge. Please let me know if you need anything. And like, like those three people are basically who I think about when I think about how I got through that period of time. And of course, my husband, who is like such an exceptional anomaly of a man. Like, he is just an epic, epic dad. Yeah. Like, how many days we would go where we would just like all the screaming and crying and stuff that would happen, and we would just look at each other like, what what did we do? And sometimes we would go to bed and we'd be like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck went wrong today? And it's like one of us would start breaking it down to debrief it and the other one would just pass out, you know? And it'd be like, well, maybe we'll talk tomorrow. Spoiler alert, we never would talk tomorrow because it was another day full of absolute bullshit. But it's like you need that. I know. It's like you need that like equal partner in the marriage and in parenting in the trenches with you. Like I can't imagine if I had one of those like lazy men who's like, "Oh, I don't want to change a diaper," you know, like I haven't done dishes in like 5 years because my husband does all the dishes, you know, like that's the kind of man I have and like that's what you need.
Are you a farmer or butcher ready to master direct-to-consumer marketing and meet success?
The team at ChopLocal is standing by ready to help. Sell your meat on the ChopLocal Marketplace. Check out all their free meat marketing educational resources at ChopLocal University. Hire the team to help you out or tune into their new podcast called Meat Success.
And remember, there's more than one recipe for meat success. Let us help you fine-tune yours today at ChopLocalUniversity.com. So when you were saying that you got to adoption relatively quickly, does that change much in terms of, I'm guessing in terms of involvement in getting sign-offs on different people, you know, that at least, that you are now the parents. And so some of that, you know, the paperwork side of things has gotten easier. Is there anything else that really changes in your life?
Yeah, I mean, coming up to the day of adoption, I was actually all of a sudden kind of dreading it just because we had two caseworkers and they were both so phenomenal. And I really like, so the caseworkers of the kids that you're raising are basically like the legal guardian, the co-parent, and you feel like you have so many more parents to give you resources and then you lose them. You know, like it was honestly scary for me to go into adoption and know that there was absolutely no reason for them to ever contact us again. Like those caseworkers, like they helped us get through every single problem we have, and like that's not an exaggeration, they helped us with everything. But the other big change, as you mentioned, the paperwork, what a huge load off my back. I mean, I can't even overstate how much motherfucking paperwork there is to do for foster kids every fucking week. Like the hours of my life I got back in paperwork, like I got a whole extra job because I could now. It's crazy.
Are you allowed to stay in touch with your caseworkers, or has that been that they don't have to sever ties? Just, I mean, obviously in a professional capacity, they can't give you advice necessarily anymore, but they can still be involved.
Right. And like, you know, they don't have to contact us. We don't have to contact them. But we do. I would say like every couple of months, like one of us will call the other just to check in and talk. And I always invite them to the birthday parties and stuff. And sometimes they can come and sometimes they can't. So yeah, we've kept in touch. And we actually, during the adoption process, you have the opportunity to change names or spellings of names and stuff like that. And we gave our daughter one of our caseworkers' middle names because we were just so attached to him. And we want to be able to remember like the kind of person he was and what he did for us forever. So we see him pretty, I don't want to say frequently, but regularly for the big stuff, you know?
Yeah, that's a real honor. I'm sure that he appreciates that.
Yeah. I hope it wasn't weird and it was appreciated, you know. I could see it being creepy, but you know.
So we've talked about kind of the first couple of phases, but what has life been like lately? I mean, you know, there's been more time has passed since the most hellish part.
We're 2 years out from the adoption, but we're, you know, 3.5 years out from placement day. That little girl is perfect. I mean, she is gorgeous. She is funny. She's happy. She's bouncy. She's giggly. She's everything. And she's 2.5 now. And Jackson is doing really well. He has made so much progress. And there's so much about him that is just like just truly incredible. He continues to be quite a challenge, but it is an honor to be his mom and to be the parents that get to help him with all of these things. He's just an incredible kid. We are never not in some kind of therapy with him. So right now we're in a particular program with him that is pretty demanding and exhausting, but it's helping, I think, the most out of anything else that we've done with him. And one of the things that I do with him is, regardless of what I'm doing in my career or what I'm doing for work, one day a week he gets to play hooky from school, and me and him spend it together the whole day. And that is typically farm work day. So that is me and him doing stuff on the farm all day long. And I think that that does a lot for him too, in terms of security, consistency, parental bonding. Um, so even though like years have gone by, we still do consistent work every day and every week to show him that this is his family and this is where we're growing up. And sometimes it's really hard to see, the progress up close on the day to day, but sometimes when we step back and we just reflect on like what things were like 6 months ago, we can see we still make progress all the time. And then my oldest is, he just had his last day of first grade yesterday, and he is also in therapy. I made the choice to put him in about a year ago to try to give him somebody to talk to about his relationship with his brother, how to work on that, how to understand what is happening in his brother's head. And that's been super helpful for him too. I don't think that he has any like diagnoses per se, but I do think that having your parents yelling at you all the time to get over it and just accept him like he's a brother is probably not helpful. So I wanted to give him another adult with a professional mental health background with children that he can go talk to. So he does that one day a week. That kid is not going to grow up to be a farmer. He is not. He is not. Jackson, my middle kid, I think is a natural ag person. Like he just fits right into that setting, and everything is so intuitive to him in that way. But my oldest kid is definitely not a farmer. He's probably not even an outdoor person. So yeah, that's where we're at. And I unfortunately own a practice again, which was kind of a necessary evil for me to continue practicing. But I have vowed that I will never let it get to the place that it was when I owned in New Jersey, when I was never home and always working. So I'm keeping it extremely niche, very small. Um, I'm also a professor one day a week. I teach large animal clinical nursing at the community college. And then I have the farm business too.
I feel like you must have more days in the week than the rest of us. That sounds like a lot of a lot of different things.
I keep everything very micro. That is the trend in my life, and when I talk to farm clients that are really overwhelmed with their farm operations too, I try to show them the same example. Like I have a very tiny farm, 7 sheep is nothing. I have a very tiny practice, 10 clients is nothing. I'm not a full-time professor, one day of the week is nothing. You add it all up and it sounds like a lot, but each thing is bite-sized.
I would push back and say none of them are nothing though. They are micro, but each of them, serves a purpose and are something. But yeah, you're not doing 100% of each thing, and that's also okay. Finding some kind of balance is very difficult for a lot of people, and it sounds like you're being intentional about it.
I am. And I think if you look at what being a farmer is like, that is a lifetime of overwork and burnout. And I think if you look at being a mother, that is a never-ending, tireless, thankless job. And if you look at being a veterinarian, I mean, people burn out, leave the field, commit suicide. Like that is also an extremely exhausting career. So if I really want to do these three things, I have to do it this way. It's the only way to do any of these things half-assed, at least a little bit good.
A third of an ass for each thing.
A third of an ass.
So we're usually talking to people on this show who, are like you, have a farming as part of their life and part of their kids' lives. So you already mentioned about, the different personalities of your kids, but what are some of the benefits that you see in incorporating agriculture into your kids' lives?
For Jackson, so he was the older of the two that we got from foster care. I don't know like how I would do all of this with him without the farm, because for him it's a very grounding thing. Not only does it help him physically work out a lot of his like pent up rage and all of his other issues, but he seems naturally attuned to the animals and just things that are super like rugged, right? Like he wants to be able to hit a rock with a hammer for 45 minutes, and he can do that. So for me, it's huge to give him that. But it's also the matter of like routine and consistency versus a challenge to that system. So for him to feel comfortable and secure, something like a feeding routine is a really healing thing. Like he knows what time the animals get fed and what they need, and he feels confident in knowing what to do and how to do it, and that schedule is always there. However, the other thing it does for us is it does help challenge that, because at some point in life he has to learn that shit doesn't go according to plan, and as you guys know, sheep frequently throw us curveballs. So to have things happen that are unplanned, that might seem scary or anxiety inducing, but we figure it out and we get through it. Maybe we curse at each other. Maybe somebody jams a finger in a gate, or you get run over by a sheep or something like that. We get through it. Whether we failed or succeeded at managing the problem, it's good for him to see that shit can get thrown at him. He doesn't have to have a mental breakdown every time, and gives him the tools to deal with that. Where I appreciate farming for my oldest is that he does not like it. He does not really want anything to do with all of this, and it's not for him. But I also use this as a challenge too, to instill some discipline and try to teach him how to have a work ethic and be a team player. Because if there's things that he wants to do, like he, wants to go inside and lay around on the couch and be a couch potato, he can totally do that, but he is expected to do some of his farm chores. He doesn't have to like it. He can bitch and moan about it. He's allowed to say shit, but he does have to do the farm chores, and I sometimes I wonder how other parents pull that off without the farm setting. I don't know how I would be able to teach these things without that.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. It does add more logistical challenges, right? Like I think especially the livestock part, the fact that these animals depend on us and that we can't, I guess sometimes people get house pets for some of that same function, right? Like having something depend on you for its food or cleaning the litter box or whatever, or, things like doing dishes, that kind of stuff. But yeah, there is something about the farm element of it that for those of us who are in that lifestyle, it's the non-negotiability of it, right? I can put off the dishes till tomorrow, but the cows are going to need to get milked no matter what. So yeah, it doesn't matter how you feel about it. You just have to do it and then move on.
Or, like if it's 7 degrees outside and you're making a really good case that you don't want to go out there and do it, that's fine, but maybe you need to help dad with dinner, something like that.
Yeah, I have four, and my middle two teenagers have a set of their afternoon chores, but they're often negotiating like, okay, are you milking this afternoon, or am I, or like I'm staying after school for this thing, can you do it for me today, I'll do it tomorrow, that kind of stuff. So it just kind of build in that requirement of it's still going to get done, but who are you going to ask? Or if they have to ask mom and dad, then the stakes are higher, then we demand more.
Erin, now that I've stolen my question back from Arlene, um, a lot of the small farm homesteading community can be real. There's a real stereotype around who is involved in that, and it can tend to be a pretty the stereotype tends to be pretty uh religious slash anti-vax slash prepper slash, not everyone fits all of these criteria, but there is definitely. Pardon? Yes, yes. You rub some milk on it, it'll be fine. Um, what how do you and I ask this as someone who's in kind of the same place with my kids, like, how do you balance being a at least a little bit of a hippie with, because I mean, like, small sheep flock in the woods in Connecticut is pretty, like, it's a vibe. Um, but with also, like, yay science. Like, how do you balance these two things?
I mean, I wish I had an answer for that because that's something I feel like I struggle with all the time. As like a mom, as a farmer, and as a practitioner, it's a hard balance to strike, especially socially. And that's something that I've been ruminating on a lot lately because I feel like you see larger reflections of that in the rest of the world over other issues too. Um, but I don't know. I mean, as a practitioner, I'm definitely a very traditional medicine, not traditional, definitely a very medicine person, right? Like I like my antibiotics, I like my steroids, but because I'm a food animal practitioner, it's really imperative to me that we use these things truly judiciously and correctly because we have to have food commodities that are safe from drug residues. And that is the goal, right? For me, no matter what. So sometimes for me, that means entering a holistic alternative remedy is the perfect answer to a problem. You have to look for the scientific evidence and some literature to support decisions like that. And I feel like that's a middle ground that I'm able to strike as a practitioner with a little bit of like elbow grease and some research gumption. It's harder for me to figure out how to do that as a farmer and as a parent, especially socially, because I feel like it's hard for me to interact with other small farms um, as a farmer because it's a very anti-science, anti-medicine, anti-vet space sometimes, and motherhood feels that way a lot too. It's sometimes hard to make mom friends because it's like, no, I didn't breastfeed my children and I'm not sorry that I didn't. um so it can be really hard to get into that middle ground in either space. And I'm not sure that I have a great answer for that. But as a doctor, um, it is a hard balance to strike, but it's easy to do because holistic and alternative and food safe remedies are getting the research that they have needed for a long time currently. So it's easy to pick those things up and integrate them into your practice philosophy. Harder, I think, to pull that off though, as a farmer and as a mom. Um, it's difficult socially to find a mom raising her kids on a small farm in Connecticut that isn't evangelical and would vaccinate her kids. So I wonder sometimes if a lot of it's in my head, and if those people are out there and how I can find them and how we can be friends. But I think so much of like the human experience is like that right now too, right? Like you go on the internet and you just see one thing or the other. Um, and I think like those of us that exist in the middle ground like can't find each other. It's really hard because like we're not being super loud about our feelings a lot of the times.
Yeah, and so many of us live in communities where it doesn't feel safe to be real loud about our beliefs, or like in some relationships we make sure that it's clear where we stand, but other ones, either professionally or depending on the day or the place, you just have to keep yourself and your family safe, and maybe not exactly put all your truth out there. I will put in a plug for the Barnyard Language Facebook group for, I don't know about our regional representation, but for listeners and for Erin, like come hang out with us. We can talk about sheep and kids. This feels like a huge question for someone who's obviously gone through a lot of different parenting challenges. But what is a piece of parenting advice that you've either held on to or learned along the way that you would want to share with somebody else?
I think one of the things that I learned as a foster parent that I would have not learned otherwise is truly how many resources are out there for children. And they're not exclusive just for kids in foster care. Like, I had no idea that so many different types of occupational therapy were available for children. So many different programs, library programs, community programs. And I just simply didn't know that these programs existed. And one of the things that our caseworkers were always doing for us was being like, hey, do you know about this? You want to do this? It's on Tuesdays. Um, and I would like look at it and be like, oh, this must just be like a foster kid thing. But no, a lot of these things are just not marketed very well. So they're hard to find. But if you're going through something with a young child, a feeding problem, a behavioral issue, particularly if it's something you don't want to take to your family because like judgment, embarrassment, yada yada, there's probably like some kind of resource or program for you. It's might be a little hard to find, um, particularly as you wade through those like mommy Facebook groups that are like, I need a pediatrician that's okay with topical silver instead of an MMR vaccine. So it's hard to get there, but there are actually so many programs for kids. And if you don't have insurance, a lot of those programs will be affiliated with agencies or funds in some way that can either offset an out of pocket cost or pay for it, which is another thing I've learned too. I mean, there's all kinds of weird pockets of funding for everything out there. So if you think you have a problem and it's just you and you're the only one with this problem, that's not true. You're not the only one on the planet with that problem. And there's someone somewhere that can definitely help you with that thing.
All right. So we ask all of our guests, if you're going to dominate a category at the county fair, what would it be? And categories can be real or made up to ensure that you win.
If there was like, how sometimes they have like monster truck shows? If there was like a just total destruction competition, like if it was like which group of children could completely demolish a house fastest, yeah, my children would win that. Yeah. Yeah. It's insane how much destructive they can do.
So, like a rage room for kids.
Challenge accepted, Erin.
Nice. So we will go ahead and move into our cussing and discussing segment. If you're a listener and want to submit yours, you can use our speak pipe or our email, and both the links for those are in the show notes. Katie, after this epic episode, what are you cussing and discussing today?
Swimming pools. We live 10 or 12 miles from the closest small town pool. It's a nice pool. And 20 plus miles from a bigger pool. So I thought this year we're going to get a pool. Like not a little tiny kiddie wading pool. Like mama pulled out all the stops because I added up the cost of a family pool pass for the year. And then I started thinking about buying snacks every time you go to the pool and probably buying snacks on the way home from the pool because you're in the car for a long time and having to leave the house. And
Right. How many times do you actually feel like going to the pool? A pool in the yard does sound like a.
yeah, exactly. And then and this is a me problem, I understand it, but having to go to the pool with like that one mom whose body did actually bounce back after pregnancy, or somebody's teenage babysitters or whatever, and it just trying to figure out if you're leaving your glasses on while you're in the pool because you can't really see without them, but you look like a dipshit if you go in with them, and whatever, right?
We won't even discuss body hair because that's a whole different thing. But that's a factor. Let's be honest.
Oh, body hair. That's a whole nother cussing and discussing. Then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if I didn't think of it when I was having my shower, then.
Yeah. So I think I'll get an above ground pool. This will be great. It's big enough that the kids are actually happy with it. There's no ducks in it because it's tall enough that the ducks haven't figured out how to get in it yet. ask how I know. There is nothing that will ruin the experience of a kiddie pool as fast as it being full of Muscovy ducks. I didn't grow up with a pool. I grew up going to a summer camp where I assume they like dumped a couple gallons of bleach in there a couple times a week and called it good, kind of like, well, it's not too many funny colors. It's fine. There is so much bullshit with pools.
There's chemistry, pumps, filters,
Test strips, titrations, pHs.
And then if you have water like we do, your choices are either the water's about as clear as the Mississippi River, which is to say, not at all, or all of the iron has settled out to the bottom in a few hours since the last time the kids were in there, and you can see how clear it would be if you could get the iron out, which might be the only thing worse than having all the iron in suspension. And it turns out that no normal pool filter will remove the iron because it's too small. And a vacuum that will take it out is several $100s, and the whole point of getting the pool was to not spend all this extra money. And now my kids want to go in the pool all the time, which I appreciate, but the benefit of driving them somewhere was I had a good excuse not to let them go in the pool. But now, in the interest of I've put so much time and money into these kids, I don't really want them to drown. And it's all bullshit. And yeah, like, I love our well water because it does not reek like chlorine, except now everything I own reeks like chlorine. And you know who doesn't get to enjoy this pool? Me. Because I'm all busy with the fucking chemicals and money and the not drowning. And then, in the final, yes, why can't we dive from the top of the ladder? Well, A, you don't know how to dive, and B, you're going to break your neck and die. On and on and on. And so Father's Day comes around this weekend, and we've got our two kids, and we've got my nieces who are 13 and 16. All the kids are having such a great time together. They're out there for like several hours. The 16-year-old is actually old enough to like supervise. Like I more or less trust her to not let anyone drown intentionally, like.
yeah. And those ages are hard to get to all interact together. So an activity that all of them can do together is pretty impressive.
Yeah, right? So then they come in, and the 13-year-old tells me that my 7-year-old invented a new game. It's called P-Tag.
Is it in the pool or outside of the pool?
No, it's in the pool. A filter that doesn't take out iron is not taking out little boy pee either. I don't even quite know how P-Tag works, but I was informed that it does involve pee.
Well, I mean, the title does give it away.
Yeah. And now I don't even want to swim in a pool because it's probably 30% pee by volume.
Well, you knew they were peeing in it anyway. Let's be honest.
I know, but before they talked about P-Tag, I hadn't really thought about it. Now I'm thinking about it. And now I really can't take them to the city pool because I've like doubled down on this whole not having to go to the city pool thing. And also the first day that Jim went to blow up pool floaties, he accidentally exploded the head of the girl child's unicorn.
Were you using a high pressure?
Yeah, he was using the air tank.
Of course. Why not use the air tank, right? There's a very fine line.
Anyway, yeah. Why would like 75 psi not be a realistic choice for inflating the head of a unicorn shaped pool floaty from the Dollar Tree? Erin, what do you have to cuss and discuss today?
I wrote down so many ideas for this segment and never landed on one that felt right. I don't know.
My only discussion today is that Erin has had this cat on her lap for our entire interview, and I am just like so impressed because I have the type of cats who like the wind and the air and the sunlight and the volume of the other people in the room have to be just right for them to like maybe settle on your lap, and then they are very much disturbed if anything goes wrong. So the fact that you kept that beautiful creature on your lap the whole time is very impressive.
Yeah. We have two of these that will sit on your lap for the duration of any video meeting the whole time. And the other cat keeps circling back through to see if this one has left yet so that she can get in there. And I think the only reason she's still here is out of spite for the other cat.
I was mostly impressed that I haven't seen any cat butt close-ups, and I haven't seen you doing that thing that I always end up with where your cat will blow off fur and you'll end up with like a huge mouthful, face full of fur stuck to your face while you're on a call.
No, I do. It's like on my lap. But the other one, if she had gotten any screen time, her butthole would have been in the camera, like at least 3 minutes of butthole time. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we are mostly audio, so I mean, people listening in aren't going to get this, but we'll clip a reel out of the episode at some point, and the cat will make an appearance. Although I guess black cats probably aren't the most video friendly. But thank you so much, Erin, for sharing your story with us today and for being so candid about your family and your career and everything. And I think it's really going to make a difference for people. So thank you.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Thank you so much for coming on, Erin.
Oh, usually I ask people where they are on socials if people want to look you up. If someone's in Connecticut and is as cool as you and wants to be friends, where should they find you online?
If you want to follow like the farm and the hijinks of children on the farm and meat production and stuff, it's at Fork U Farms. So like Fork and then YOU Farms.
Which is a great name, by the way.
Thank you. My husband came up with it. He said it really gave the Jersey background vibe.
Yes. Yeah.
And then if you're more interested in like medicine, surgery, public health, zoonotic diseases, my practice is at Sheep Rock Vet. So sheep, as in the animal, rock, ROCK, vet. But I'm pretty active on both things, so that's how you can find me.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy the show, please support us on Patreon with a donation.
Big thanks go out to our show editor, Krista Paffrath at the Rural Podcast Network.
Please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
If you want to connect with other farming families, join the private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We are always in search of future guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, get in touch.